All good then. Let's get started. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone joining us this evening. My name is Lejane. I'll be hosting and chairing this webinar today. Today's webinar is a joint collaboration between the Global Alliance for Palestine and ASAP, the Association of Student Activism for Palestine. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. For anyone joining, this is going to be recorded, so if you want to turn your cameras off, please turn your cameras off. We're going to publish a report on this and we're going to share it widely. So please spread the word afterwards. Send your questions in via the chat throughout. And if it's your questions are directed towards a specific speaker, please put their name in there as well. And then at the end, we'll take them in rounds of 2 after all 4 speakers have presented. If there's any technical issues, please DM the admin team directly. And that is the Global Alliance for Palestine team on this Zoom call. For those that are new to us, let me tell you a little bit more about who we are. The Global Alliance for Palestine was born out of a moment of global awakening in the wake of Israel's assault on Gaza in 2023, when millions of people across the world, ordinary people, students, trade unionists, academics, artists, faith communities, all felt something shift, when the scale of what was unfolding was impossible to ignore. And the response was unprecedented. So at the GAFP, the GFP was established to consolidate the momentum of everything that was happening in 2023. So an international coalition of grassroots movements, civil society organizations, trade unions, academic and cultural institutions, as well as public figures. And we're uniting everyone around this one cause of justice, self-determination, and liberation for the Palestinian people. We exist to bring the fragmented landscape of solidarity efforts together into a coherent, coordinated international front. We're guided by a remarkable steering committee, including Jeremy Corbyn, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, Jerry Adams, Professor Yanis Varoufakis, among others. And we're growing every month. Just last month, we held our very first webinar on Hasbara, Israel's state-sponsored propaganda warfare, and the response was extraordinary. Tonight is the continuation of that work because the situation on the ground keeps demanding our attention, and we intend to keep meeting that demand. So why are we here tonight? On the 30th of March 2026, the Israeli Knesset passed the death penalty for terrorists law by a vote of 62 to 48. It was spearheaded by the far-right Jewish Power Party leader, Ben Gvir. The scenes in the Knesset chamber told you everything you needed to know. Lawmakers were photographed wearing the noose pins, and the debate descended into MPs heatedly arguing about preferred methods of killing. The law mandates the death penalty by hanging for Palestinians convicted of causing the death of an Israeli citizen. Once a conviction is secured, the sentence is mandatory, and there's no possibility of pardon, no sentence reduction, no reduction into like anything other than a life imprisonment. And the state's decision to kill is designed to be absolute and irreversible. And it's engineered to move fast. So the law requires that executions be carried out within 90 days of sentencing. It's a deliberate mechanism made to ensure that the state can complete its killing before the international community can mobilize to intervene. It also removes the requirement for a unanimous judicial decision, replacing it with a simple majority of a 3-judge panel in military courts. The same military courts that maintain a 96% conviction rate, and where convictions routinely rest on convictions extracted through torture and systematic duress. And we know that this targets exclusively Palestinians. Jewish Israeli settlers who commit similar acts are tried in civilian courts under an entirely separate legal framework. This is a 2-tiered system of justice. This is apartheid codified into law. And it operates against the backdrop of mass detention, where over 9,500 Palestinians are currently held in Israeli death camps, roughly half of them without charge or trial. This law is the ultimate lethal instrument added to a system that's already been described by human rights organizations as a network of torture camps. And the international response has been significant. 8 Muslim majority countries issued a joint condemnation. The EU reminded Israel of its obligation under the association agreement. Germany, France, Italy, and the UK all urged the Knesset to abandon the bill ahead of the vote. The Association for Civil Rights in Israel filed an emergency Supreme Court petition within minutes of the law passing, calling it discriminatory by design. And the UN has warned its violations of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, a treaty that Israel itself ratified. And yet the law stands. Tonight, our speakers will talk us through the legal anatomy of this legislation, the reality of the prison system it will operate through, the psychological warfare it represents for families and the wider movement, and the organizing strategies that can meet it. So without further delay, let's get into it. We'll begin with our very first speaker. I'm absolutely honored to introduce Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. Dr. Mustafa is a physician and a cornerstone of Palestinian political life. He co-founded the Palestinian National Initiative, also known in Arabic as Al-Mubadara, and has been a vital, consistent voice in the Legislative Council for 2 decades. As the chairman of the Palestinian Medical Relief Society, he spent decades building the actual healthcare infrastructure that sustains the community under siege. Whether he's sitting on the Palestinian Central Council or help steer the Global Alliance for Palestine, Dr. Mustafa brings an unparalleled depth of strategic and political clarity. Today, we're looking to him to help us move beyond awareness toward tangible outcomes, particularly on how Palestinian leadership and international solidarity can coordinate in a unified response that creates real accountability. Dr. Mustafa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everybody participating, and I thank you for your kind words. I'm pleased to be with our colleagues today who are participating, Arab and Khalid and others. I am very thankful to Mr. Anastakriti for arranging all of that. I want to start by saying that this law was passed and on the proposition of the fascist Israeli Minister of Internal Security, Ben-Gvir, who himself is an illegal settler living in Kiryat Arba, illegal settlements near Hebron. The law, in my opinion, reflects 5 specific aspects. The first one is that it was meant to justify what has already happened, which is a huge number of killing of Palestinians. The death penalty law is meant to provide cover to the fact that Israel has already conducted more than 1,000, in my opinion, and it could be 2,000 cases of field execution against Palestinian hostages who were taken hostages in Gaza, especially those in Sidi Man prison. We don't have the full information about all of these executions that already happened, but we have testimonies of people who witnessed the death penalty exercised even without a law in field execution in Gaza. So the first goal of this law is to really justify this kind of illegal killing. Second, this law, as you have just mentioned, reflects how deep the system of apartheid is, but even takes it to a much higher level, where if a Palestinian kills an Israeli, he will be subjected to death sentence, but if an Israeli kills a Palestinian or Palestinians, he will not be subjected to this law. Even in the worst times of South African apartheid system, the South African leaders at that time did not dare to reach that point of discrimination. They would have passed a law which would have said that if a black man kills a white man, he would be executed, but the opposite will not happen. And that's exactly what Israel has done. So it actually affirms and consolidates the system of apartheid that already prevails in the occupied territories, including something that never happened anywhere in the world, like segregation of roads as we have in the West Bank. Third point, this law reflects how deep fascism is in Israel. And I think the scene of Israeli Knesset members, the so-called Israeli parliament, celebrating the passage of the law by drinking champagne with champagne glasses inside the parliament itself was a reflection of how savage this structure has become. But worse than that, men and women, members of the Israeli Knesset, were putting on their chest the symbols of the nose, the symbols of the rope that will be used against Palestinians. I think that reflects such a level of terrible fascism that is unprecedented. And Ben Gvir himself added insult to injury when he celebrated his 50th birthday with a cake that was presented to him by his other fascist wife with the image of the rope that will be hanging Palestinians. So it's racism, it's apartheid, it's fascism, it's an instrument to justify already the killing of Palestinians, including the fact that 91 Palestinian prisoners have already died in prisons in the West Bank and in Israel. And these prisoners were killed either by beating them or torturing them or depriving them from proper medical aid when they got sick or because they were starved to death. And I think the Israelis here are reflecting a certain level of revenge against Palestinian people because of the failure of this government on the 7th of October. And they try to reflect this revenge, but also using these laws, they are trying to avoid accountability about their failure on the 7th of October, where there are so many people calling for an investigation of what happened then. But I want also to add that there is an additional law that was just passed by the Israeli Knesset against those who participated in the 7th of October, as they claim. And while this death penalty law was passed with 62 votes from the Israeli government and the Israeli opposition, the new law, which justifies the execution of all those prisoners who are in Israeli jail today, and who Israel claims that they have participated on the 7th of October, this law, the new law, was passed with 93 votes out of 120. And if you exclude Arab participants, that means that more than 90% of the Israeli Jewish members of the Knesset support such terrible laws. That shows how deep the level of fascism is in Israel. But I want to say also that this has happened, the passage of the first law, and now the passage of the second law, which is even worse, would not have happened if Israel really was subjected to what we are demanding, which is boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Had there been real punitive acts against Israel, had Israel been held accountable for the terrible massacres they have committed in Gaza, including the terrible genocide, we would not have seen this Israeli Knesset daring to pass such laws in violation of every democratic system. And yet, they continue to claim that Israel is a democracy that practices occupation, practices apartheid, and practices death penalty. Now, the most interesting thing here is what Spain did with Slovenia and Ireland when they went to the European Union, demanding the end of the association agreement between Israel and the European Union on the basis of Israel's violation of the second article of this agreement by passing the death penalty law. Unfortunately, this request was rejected by the European Union because of the position of some European countries, including Italy and Germany. And in my opinion, that's a crime. It's a serious crime that demand from the side of Spain, Slovenia, and Ireland was not accepted, although the crime that Israel is committing is so obvious and so clear. And very soon we will start hearing about conduction of assassination again through the use of this law. And I think this will create even larger protests all over the world. What needs to be done is very clear. We need to organize as much as we can. We need to mobilize in every possible way. And we need to pressure members of parliaments of every country. The main first demand should be complete boycott of the Israeli Knesset that passed this law. And the first target should be the British Parliament. And I think we have to try to collect as many signatures as we can to demand the boycott of relationship with the Israeli Knesset. And that should happen in all European parliaments, but in other parliaments all over the world. I think conducting such a campaign would be very important. In addition, of course, to conducting general boycott, divestment, sanctions campaigns against Israel in general and against the genocide that is committed against Palestinian people and against the passing of such fascist laws. Finally, I want to say, Israel is so mistaken, and this fascist government is so wrong when it thinks that the passage of such laws as death penalty laws will stop the Palestinian struggle or will affect the Palestinian determination to continue our struggle to achieve our freedom. I think the passage of this law reflects not only fascism, but also ignorance, because these people who passed the laws probably don't know about what happened in 1930, when the British colonial power executed 3 Palestinian fighters who struggled for Palestinian freedom from British colonialism, Fuad Hijazi, Ata Zir, and Muhammad Jamjoom. That happened in 1930. Did it lead to Palestinians stopping their struggle? On the contrary, the executions of these three heroes led practically or participated in leading to the greatest revolution that Palestinian people conducted, which is 1936 revolution. And by the way, I encourage everybody, if you haven't done that so up till now, to watch the film Palestine 36. And I hope we will see another film, Palestine 48, to remind everybody with the huge and great heroic Palestinian struggle and the great history of our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mustafa. That was really, really, really helpful, really informative. And I think you're right when you're talking about the aims and the goals. It really gives us something to work towards, because I think there's a lack of focus as to what the movement should be really aiming towards one demand. And I don't think anything can break Palestinian determination and the will to resist. Okay. On to our next speaker. We will now have Khalid Mahajne. Mr. Mahajne is a human rights lawyer who has become a vital lifeline for those trapped within the Israeli military court and prison systems. Working with the Prisoners and Detainee Affairs Commission, he has consistently put himself on the line to reach those in total isolation. He was actually the first lawyer to gain access to said Tayman facility, and it was his testimony that first forced the world to look at the systematic brutality and the torture occurring behind those walls. He's going to break down the technical anatomy of the death penalty law for us, explaining how its absence of any meaningful appeal and its 90-day execution deadline function not just as judicial measures, but as a direct tool of colonial control. Khalid, over to you.
مساء الخير، شكرا على الاستضافة. بس عندي استفسار، أتحدث بشكل متواصل ولا أتوقف في بعض من أجل الترجمة؟
Good evening. I'm pleased to be among you. I have a question though. Should I speak continuously or should I wait and speak after to allow the translator to translate?
اللي بريحك. How do you feel most comfortable? بريحك إنه تحكي بأجزاء؟
ما في مشكلة، أنا عادي، ما في مشكلة.
Okay. اللي براحتك. أنت
طيب.
there's also a translator and however it works.
لجين أعتقد أن المترجم بيفضل لو إنه الأخ خالد بيحكي مقاطع، يعني 20 ثانية 25 ثانية ثم يعطيه فرصة للترجمة. شكرا.
طيب شكرا على الاستضافة، وعذرا أن أتحدث باللغة العربية لأنه فعلا أسهل لي أن أنقل بالفعل معاناة يعني الأسرى وأوضاعهم. أتحدث بالتفاصيل أكثر مما أرى يوميا من معاناة الأسرى. يعني عمليا منذ 7 أكتوبر بدأت حرب بالسجون الإسرائيلية، حرب بالتوازي مع الحرب الإجرامية التي شنتها إسرائيل على قطاع غزة. هذه الحرب مستمرة حتى هذا اليوم. هذه الحرب ما زالت مستمرة بتفاصيل أبشع مما يتصوره هذا العالم، مما نتصوره نحن من نعمل في هذا المجال، من نقوم بزيارة السجون بشكل يومي تقريبا، ونقوم بمتابعة الأسرى بالسجون الإسرائيلية والمحاكم الإسرائيلية. ما يمارس اليوم منذ 7 أكتوبر وحتى هذا اليوم يفوق كل منطق وكل خيال مما تمارسه إسرائيل بحق الأسرى.
Thank you for welcoming me, and excuse me for speaking in Arabic. I prefer so much. It's so much better for me to speak in Arabic because I can give you all the details and all the technicalities. Since the 7th of October and since the incarceration of so many Palestinians, from that day onwards, there have been so many violations that are so difficult for me to even quantify because in the prisons themselves, the kidnappings and all of that. And this has been continuing from the 7th of October onwards up till today.
في الحقيقة كل العالم اليوم يتحدث عن القوانين العنصرية، وبالذات قوانين الإعدام التي سنتها إسرائيل مؤخرا بالشهرين الأخيرين. ولكن لا أحد يعي أن هذه القوانين جاءت امتداد واستمرار للحرب التي تمارسه إسرائيل على الأسرى. هناك أكثر من 100 شهيد سقط بالسجون الإسرائيلية ومعسكرات الجيش الإسرائيلي، وباعتقادي الأعداد أكثر من هذه الأرقام. هذه الأرقام التي معروفة أسماءهم وهوياتهم عند عائلاتهم وعند المؤسسات الحقوقية. يوميا تمارس إسرائيل الإعدام، وتمارس إسرائيل تمويت الأسرى بشكل جدا فظيع.
These apartheid laws that have been held up by Israel, all the executions that have occurred in the prisons themselves, 100 people, 100 martyrs whose names we are certain of have already been killed. These are the ones we only know, but Israel conducts on a daily basis all these killings. It conducts all of this torture, whether be it to the prisoners who are being held in Israeli prisons or whom they assault and capture on the ground in Palestinian locations and in Gaza.
أنا أتحدث عن نفسي. أنا محامي أعمل في هذا المجال منذ أكثر من 15 عام. يعني تابعت ورافقت المئات من الأسرى الفلسطينيين من كل المناطق الفلسطينية، الضفة الغربية، غزة، الداخل والقدس. ولكن ما أشاهده وما يشاهده العديد من المحامين يعملون في هذا المجال منذ 7 أكتوبر، باعتقادي إسرائيل ليست بحاجة لقوانين من أجل أن تعدم وتعذب وتنكل بالأسرى الفلسطينيين داخل السجون الإسرائيلية. ما نشاهده يوميا عمليا يعني أستصعب أحيانا أن أتحدث وأنقل للعالم تفاصيل ما نشاهده. يعني على سبيل المثال، أنا كنت يعني لسوء الحظ أول محامي يدخل إلى معسكر سدي تيمان، هذا المعسكر السيء، هذا المعسكر يعني المكان الأبشع في هذا العالم والسيء في هذا. يعني بالنسبة لي هذه التجربة كانت صعبة لأنها ما زالت ترافقني حتى هذا اليوم من تفاصيل صعبة ومروعة شاهدتها ولامستها واستمعت إليها من شهادات أسرى تمارس إسرائيل بحق الأسرى هناك.
I have been a lawyer for 15 years. I have represented and assisted Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, in the 1948 area, in Jerusalem. I was also the first lawyer to enter the prison of Sde Timan, and it was an extremely difficult experience for me. I heard many difficult details, excruciating details from prisoners there. It was horrible. It was horrendous. The scenes of horror that I have listened to are so bad that I cannot even describe in words or in detail how bad they were. And this has been occurring before the 7th of October, but it has been exacerbated so much more after the 7th of October.
يعني لا أعتقد أن في هذا العالم يمكن أي إنسان أن يتحمل أن أن يبقى أسرى عزل من قطاع غزة بالأساس، وهم أسرى من المدنيين لا علاقة لهم بأي ذنب، موجودون حتى اليوم في هذه المعسكرات، معسكرات الجيش الإسرائيلي، منذ 7 أكتوبر بظروف يعني أصعب مما ممكن أن أوصف في هذا المقام في هذه الندوة. هل ممكن أن نستوعب، أو أحد منا أن نستوعب، أن هناك أسرى ما زالوا مقيدي الأيدي والأرجل منذ أكثر من عامين من أسرى قطاع غزة؟ هل يمكن أن نتخيل أن أسرى معصوبي الأعين منذ أكثر من عامين؟ هل يمكن أن نتخيل أن أسرى لم يبدلوا ملابسهم حتى الملابس الداخلية منذ أشهر طويلة من قطاع غزة، من أسرى الضفة الغربية؟ هل لنا أن نتخيل أن أسرى ما زالوا يأكلون نفس وجبات الطعام، الفطور، الغداء والعشاء منذ أكثر من عامين، والعالم لا يشاهد كل هذه المشاهد ولا يعي كل هذه التفاصيل؟
The most excruciating problem is that most of these people in the Israeli prisons are civilians. Civilians in these jails, in Israeli camps, and it is a huge problem. These civilians have been handcuffed for the past 2 years continuously. They have been blindfolded continuously for the past 2 years. They have been receiving the same meals that are meager meals, that are barely enough, they barely suffice for the past 2 years. And the world is doing absolutely nothing. The world is just watching and doing absolutely nothing. These are civilians, these are women, these are children, these are men. These are people who have nothing whatsoever to do with the war that has occurred in Gaza.
ممن ليس من المتفاجئين من أن تسن إسرائيل هذه القوانين العنصرية، أن تقوم بإعدام أسرى عزل، أسرى لم يستطيعوا حتى الدفاع عن أنفسهم داخل السجون الإسرائيلية في ظل هذه الأوضاع. بالذات أن يعني صحيح أن الإعدام يمكن أن ينهي حياة إنسان، ولكن ما تمارسه إسرائيل بحق الأسرى هو عمليا الموت البطيء. يعني الموت البطيء الذي الأسرى يستنزف حتى إنسانيتهم داخل السجون الإسرائيلية. وكان الأفظع والتي ما زالت تمارسه إسرائيل وتتفاخر به إسرائيل، هذه هي النقطة، أن إسرائيل تتفاخر ما تقوم به بحق الأسرى، تتفاخر ما تقوم به بحق أسرى غزة، الضفة الغربية. ويجب أن لا ننسى أن هناك أسرى عرب داخل السجون ومعسكرات الجيش الإسرائيلي، هناك أسرى بالعشرات من سوريا، هناك أسرى بالعشرات من لبنان. تمارس إسرائيل بحقهم ما تمارسه بحق ابن قطاع غزة وابن الضفة الغربية وابن القدس. ولكن كان المؤسف، وعمليا هذا الذي يعني يؤتيني إلى نقطة أنني لم أتفاجأ من موضوع الإعدام، بالذات ما تمارسه إسرائيل بحق أسرى غزة اليوم منذ 7 أكتوبر. فعليا أنا شخصيا لم أتخيل، يعني ذهبت إلى معسكر سدة تيمان ولم أكن مهيأ شخصيا أن أقوم بالاستماع إلى أصعب الشهادات التي ما زالت تؤلمني حتى هذا اليوم. أنا أستمع إلى شهادة صحفي يعمل في التلفزيون العربي واسمه محمد عرب، وهذا الصحفي نقل بشهادة حقيقية وواقعية كل ما تمارسه إسرائيل بحقه وبحق الأسرى. ولكن كان الأصعب، يعني ممكن أن نتحمل موضوع الجوع والتجويع وعدم تبديل الملابس والمسبات وسب الذات الإلهية وعمليا الإهانات والتنكيل، ممكن أن نستوعب هذا الأمر. ولكن كان المؤسف يعني أن أستمع إلى شهادة تتعلق بأمرين مخيفين، هو اغتصاب أسرى وبتر أطراف أسرى. اغتصاب أسرى مدنيين من الرجال والمسنين والأطفال من قطاع غزة، وأن تبتر أطباء أتحدث عن أطباء مدنيين يأتون من المستشفيات الإسرائيلية ليقوموا ببتر أطراف أسرى من قطاع غزة داخل هذه المعسكرات، وبالذات معسكر سدة تيمان.
I am not at all surprised that Israel is executing unarmed civilian Palestinians. Not only Palestinians, there are more than Palestinians. There are other Arabs that I will discuss in a bit. These detainees are being subjected to a slow death, whereby the captives are stripped of their humanity. And the problem is that Israel boasts about this. Israel is really pleased about this. It says that we are doing this and we are doing that. There are prisoners from Syria and from Lebanon in the tens. Unfortunately, I was not surprised that Israel determined the death penalty. But I did not at all imagine that I would listen to testimonies of certain people regarding certain violations that they have been subjected to. For example, there was a reporter, Muhammad Arab, from Television Al-Arab, Arab television. He spoke, and others as well, spoke of all the insults that they received, that the Israeli guards would curse God, they would curse the Prophet, the Quran, and all of that. But the worst thing for me was that I heard of instances of rape of prisoners and decapitation of limbs, and that the civilian Israeli doctors would come from Israeli hospitals to these prisons, to Sde Timan specifically, and do these amputations. The problem, and not only to the Palestinian prisoners, but also to scores of other Arab prisoners who are held there. تفضل.
هل ممكن أن أحد يتخيل في هذا العالم أن مجندين ومجندات إسرائيليين بجيل 19 عام 20 عام 21 عام يقومون باغتصاب؟ وهنا المؤلم أكثر والأكثر إيلام هو موضوع النساء المجندات. أتحدث عن إناث، عن إناث يمارسن الاغتصاب بحق أسرى، بحق مسنين من قطاع غزة في داخل هذا المعسكر. أن يجبر مسن، وهذه من أحد الشهادات المؤلمة التي ما زالت تؤلم حتى اليوم، أن تجبر مجندة إسرائيلية مسن من قطاع غزة أن يقوم بالنوم على بطنه بدون أي ملابس، بتجريده من ملابسه نهائيا، يكون معصوب الأعين، يكون مقيد اليدين والرجلين، وبكل بساطة مجندين صغار الجيل أمام أعين كل الأسرى، أمام أعين كل زملائه ورفاقه الأسرى من قطاع غزة، أن يشاهدوا ويجبروا أن يشاهدوا مشهد من مشاهد الاغتصاب. أن تكون مجندة بإدخال عصا أو بإدخال خرطوم مطفأة الحرائق إلى داخل مؤخرة أسير، وضخ المادة الكيماوية وضخ المسدسات وإدخال أدوات يعني لا تخطر لا على البال ولا على الخاطر، بإحشاء أسرى مدنيين منهم من مسنين. وهذه شهادة الأكثر مؤلمة ما زالت حتى اليوم، هو المسن الذي اغتصب داخل هذا المعسكر، وبعد ساعات لاقى حتفه هذا المسن ولا أحد يعرف تفاصيله نهائيا. فهذا عمليا يأتي أن إسرائيل ليست بحاجة لقانون من أجل أن تعدم الأسرى، من أجل أن تعدم الأسرى الغزيين. اليوم القانون الذي سن مؤخرا بالكنيسة الإسرائيلي، أو القانون الذي سن منذ شهرين، إسرائيل هدفه هو الانتقام من بعد 7 أكتوبر، هو الانتقام من كل ما هو فلسطيني على هذه الأرض. هي تريد إبادة كل ما هو عربي فلسطيني على من يعيشون على هذه الأرض.
I have witnessed and I have heard testimonies of people who have witnessed young Israeli conscripts, military, very young, in their early 20s, for example, and of women conscripts, military, who are raping old Palestinian detainees. There was an instance of one very old man who was forced to sleep naked, with his hands tied and blindfolded on his stomach, in front of all of his colleagues and his friends, to see him being raped by a young Israeli soldier, a woman, with either a stick or with a fire hose, a fire pump, whereby chemicals were pumped into this man who was naked, tied up, blindfolded. And by the way, it was this old man who was raped, who actually died afterwards due to this rape. And this was conducted in front of all the soldiers, all the detainees. And the thing is, Israel does not really need a law like the law from 2 months ago, nor the law that it passed recently, in order to humiliate and torture Palestinians. This is something that Israel is proud of doing, that Israel has been doing for a very long time. And this law has just been the cream on the top, so to say. تفضل.
هل يمكن لأحد أن يتحمل هذا المشهد؟ أسرى مقيدي الأيدي لأشهر طويلة، وبسبب تآكل اللحم وعدم تقديم العلاج، أن هناك سياسة إسرائيلية بعدم تقديم العلاج للأسرى بالسجون الإسرائيلية، ويبتكر الحل. أطباء يبتكرون الحل البديهي ولكن الفاشي هذا الحل، أن يقوم الأطباء بعملية جدا 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 فظيعة، وهي أن يبتروا أطراف أسرى، أن تبتر أطراف أسير بدون تخدير، بدون أي وقاية. لا يسمح للأسير أن يبكي، لا يسمح للأسير أن يصرخ أو أن يعبر حتى عن مشاعره، أو أن يعبر حتى عن حزنه. أن تبتر أطرافه يعني بسهولة، ومن بعدها يلقى حتفه هذا الأسير بسبب فقدان الدم وبسبب عدم استطاعته على تحمل هذا المشهد، أن تبتر أطرافه، أقدامه أو يديه من أمامه. هذا ما يمارس. هذا لا يقل فظاعة عن إعدام أسرى، هذا لا يقل فظاعة عن إنهاء حياة أسرى. يوم أمس فقط أخرجت شهادة أحد الأسرى من داخل السجون الإسرائيلية أن يجبروا على تجريدهم من ملابسهم نهائيا، وأن يخرج الرجال من داخل الزنازين إلى ساحة المعتقلات وهم عراة بدون ملابس لدقائق معدودة. تخيلوا أن أسرى رجال كلهم عراة داخل ساحة لدقائق معدودة، ومن ثم يعادوا إلى الزنزانة. هذا الأمر يؤلم الإنسان، هذا الأمر عمليا ينزع إنسانية الإنسان منه. هذا الأمر لا يمكن الإنسان يتحمله.
The most painful witnesses and testimonies of the prisoners, for example, these prisoners have been handcuffed for months. The handcuffs have not been removed at all. Whatever they want to do, the handcuffs are on 24/7. Blood gushing out of their arms, out of their hands, and there is no medication whatsoever provided. Doctors resort, Israeli doctors who come to the prison, they resort to cutting off the limbs of these captives, of these prisoners, without anesthesia whatsoever, without any form of anesthesia. And the prisoners are not allowed to even cry. They are seeing this blood gushing out of them. They feel all this pain. They are feeling their life being lost and exiting their bodies, and they are not allowed at all to even utter a sound of pain. And eventually, these prisoners die after these decapitations because there is no medication afterwards whatsoever. There is no anesthesia. The prisoners are also allowed a very short period of time in the open, but they are sent out naked, nude, no clothes whatsoever. These men mainly are forced to stand for 5 minutes, all gathered together in one place, totally naked. And this is an extremely humiliating matter. Israel has been adamant on humiliating Palestinians for such a long time, and this is just another nail to be added to the coffin, unfortunately. تفضل.
يعني هذه المعلومات والتفاصيل هي جزء بسيط من آلاف الشهادات، من آلاف التفاصيل التي نقوم نحن كمحامين. أنا يعني دائما أعتقد أنا كمحامي أدخل إلى المعتقلات كمحامي وأخرج منها حامل شهادات أحيانا أثقل مني، شهادات لأسرى يعذبون ويموتون يوميا، ولكن بسبب ضيق الوقت والتطرق لقانون الإعدام. يعني عمليا القانون بالأساس هذه سن منذ شهرين بالكنيسة الإسرائيلي. يعني هذا القانون بدأ يعني دخل لحيز التنفيذ، لم يجمد نهائيا. المحكمة العليا التي يعني بادعاء أنها راعية حقوق الإنسان، هذه المحكمة لم تجمد القانون، أعطت القانون مساحة أكثر للعمل، وهذا القانون يمس كل إنسان اليوم عربي في هذا العالم. هذا القانون يمس الإنسان ابن الضفة الغربية في حال قام بمخالفة وتكون الضحية فيها يهودي إسرائيلي سوف يعدم. هذا يمس ابن الداخل العربي الفلسطيني الذي يعيش في إسرائيل في حال قام بمخالفة من دوافع أيديولوجية فكرية وسياسية أن يكون معرض للإعدام. ولا يستثني أي أحد سوى يستثني اليهود. هذا القانون عنصري. هذا القانون لا يمكن أن نعول على المحكمة العليا أو على إسرائيل أن تقوم بعدم العمل به، ويجب أن يكون التعويل عالميا فعلا أن تجبر إسرائيل هذه المرة على الأقل أن تجبر إسرائيل على وقف الحرب على الأسرى، ووقف الحرب على أسرى غزة، وقف العمل بقانون الإعدام الحالي وقانون الإعدام السابق، لأنه في حال بقي العالم صامت سوف ينفذ إعدامات بحق الأسرى بالعشرات. الحديث يدور عن 400 أسير من قطاع غزة سوف يعدموا بحجة القانون الحالي الذي سن منذ يومين. هذا القانون يمسهم بدون عمليا بشكل جدا فظيع، بدون محاكمات، بدون استئناف، بدون دفاع، بدون أدلة، فقط لأنهم من قطاع غزة وبادعاء قاموا بالدخول إلى غلاف غزة سوف يعدم هؤلاء 400 أسير. فعلى العالم بالفعل أن يجبر لمرة واحدة على الأقل، لمرة واحدة أن يستيقظ العالم من هذه الغيبوبة ويجبر إسرائيل على وقف كل هذه الحرب التي تمارسها.
As a lawyer, I carry witnesses of many people, the testimonies of many prisoners. And these testimonies are very overbearing. They are very heavy. And if I wanted to speak about all of them, I wouldn't have enough time, because now we have to get into the details of the law. This law, this ill-fated law, has now come into effect. And the Supreme Court in Israel did not freeze this law. This law now will be against everybody in Palestine. It will be against the people of the West Bank. It will be against the people whose land was occupied by 1948. It does not exempt nor exclude anybody except the Jewish component of Palestine. This is a law of apartheid. The supreme law in Israel did not object to it. It is now time for the world to stand up and to react positively against this current law. Otherwise, hundreds of Palestinians will die. Currently, there are 400 Palestinian prisoners from Gaza who will die without any court hearings, without any appeals, without any proof, for the mere fact that they have crossed the yellow line, for the mere fact that they have been captured within Gaza. The world now has to stand united for once in its history against this apartheid state and say that we are against this law. It has to take a stance, it has to be united, and it has to be followed by action. تفضل.
جملة
We just
أخيرة
need to
جملة أخيرة
I'm just آسفة بدي أحكي إذا آخر the last contribution آخر إشي إذا you wanna add anything آخر إشي وبعدين we'll move on.
جملة أخيرة. يعني صحيح أن القانون الإعدام الذي سنه بن غفير يعني لن يطبق على الأسرى القابعين اليوم بالسجون الإسرائيلية، ولكن هذا لا يعني أن الأسرى الفلسطينيين داخل السجون محصنين، وبالذات قيادات الحركة الأسيرة مثل الأسير مروان البرغوثي. هذا القانون يعطي مساحة أكثر لبن غفير أن يتمادى أكثر وأن يقوم بتصفية الأسرى داخل السجون الإسرائيلية.
It is true that the law that has been passed recently will probably not affect that many people in the prison now, but it will affect so many more people. For example, Marwan al-Barghouthi, who has been in the prison system in Israel for decades, this law will most probably affect him as well. And therefore, this law of apartheid that Ben Gvir has championed will be very detrimental to the lives of all Palestinians in Palestine. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much.
شكرا كتير. Thank you so much. That was absolutely shocking to hear and to know that this is something that was experienced firsthand, and that Khalid sees this on a day-to-day basis has just the stories beyond anything I can say. But to end it on a note, to talk about Marwan Barghouti is exactly what we need, as we are now joined by Arab Barghouti. Arab brings a very sharp modern edge to this movement. He's a financial analyst by profession, but he's repurposed that expertise in strategic influence and communication to lead the international campaign for the release of his father, Marwan Barghouti, one of the most prominent Palestinian political prisoners in the world. Arab has been tireless in ensuring that the plight of the Palestinian political prisoners remains a central, unavoidable issue on the global stage. While our other panelists address the legal and political dimensions of this law, Arab will offer a unique lens into the psychological warfare behind it, specifically how legislation like this essentially functions as collective punishment designed to try and break the spirit of families and the liberation movement at large. Arab, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. I just want to say that, of course, I'm honored to be speaking after Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. It's a real honor. He's one of our role models in Palestine as a generation. And of course, Mr. Khalid, who gave all the details, the painful details, and it was really painful to hear. But unfortunately, it's very important to raise the awareness about the true catastrophe that is happening behind the Israeli presence with the Palestinian political prisoners. I think because both of them have covered the law and the details of what the Palestinian political prisoners go through, I would like to focus on my father and his experience as a Palestinian political prisoner, but also as a Palestinian leader, widely respected in Palestine and internationally, of course. And just to say, he's someone, we always say that he's someone who embodies the Palestinian story. He's someone who grew up in the West Bank, and from there he joined the movement for the freedom of the Palestinian people, became a young leader in the 80s, the head of the student council of Birzeit University, went to prison at the age of 15, at the age of 18, then kept going back and forth in the 80s until he got exiled outside of Palestine in 87 and got back when the Oslo Accords happened. And, after that, the Second Intifada started, and he became the face of the Second Intifada, and that's where they tried to assassinate him a few times. And when they failed, they kidnapped him from Ramallah, which is illegal. And I think that it's very important that, and this is one of the things that are very important to highlight. When the Western media talks about Palestinian political prisoners, they bring it up as if it's a fact. They've been convicted. But they don't say convicted by whom. They don't say what prison system are we dealing with. And we're dealing with a prison system that has a conviction rate between 96 and 99% against Palestinians. It put more than 800,000 Palestinians in prison since 1967. And it's a tool of the occupation. And I think this is exactly why it's very important to always remember that the Palestinian political prisoners issue is not only a random issue, it's one of the pillars of the Palestinian liberation movement. And I think as someone who has lived as a family member of someone who has been in prison, the experience of the families of political prisoners is also very painful. I remember I used to visit my father twice a month until I turned 16. And when I say visit, you need to understand that this is a journey that starts from 5 a.m., 4 a.m., and ends the next day at 2 a.m. So we're talking about 20, 22, 23 hours, where you go from checkpoint to checkpoint, where you get stripped searched, and you get to the prison, you wait at the prison. If it's hot, it's hot. If it's raining, it's raining. You wait outside until everyone is done, until we can go back to the buses, and so on, only for a 45-minute visit where we have glass between us and the prisoner, and we can never touch them. I haven't been able to hug my father in 24 years. And I think this is an example of the suffering of the families. And this is not a coincidence that I go through all of that as a journey, as a vicious journey to visit my father. It's deliberate. It's sending a message to me and to my generation that if you dare to say no to the occupation, this is going to be your destiny. And it's a message that is very clear and to scare us. And, you know, after I turned 16, I would only see my father once every 2 years, every 3 years. I haven't been able to see my father in 4 years. So it's been way before October 7th. And I think this is very important for people to understand, because it didn't start on October 7th. It got accelerated. It got, you know, more aggressive after October 7th, for sure. But I think it's been happening for a long time. But nevertheless, because my father is someone that doesn't take no as an answer, he's someone who's like always has the biggest and the most powerful weapon, which is hope. What he did inside prison, I think, you know, he spent the first 3 years in solitary confinement. Right after he got out of solitary, what he did is that he turned his prison, Hadarim prison, into an actual academy, an actual university. He's someone who has a master's degree. He started with his PhD outside of prison and completed his PhD from inside prison by sneaking paper after paper through his lawyer from Cairo University. And he got it in political science, and he started teaching because he used to teach in Jerusalem University. He's graduated more than 450 prisoners with bachelor's degrees, and more than 200 with master's degrees. And I think this is my personal favorite achievement that my father has done, because it shows that he always finds hope in the middle of the darkness. And the other thing is the prisoner's document, where he initiated alongside the leadership of the Palestinian prisoners movement and outside of prison, a document that has become the roadmap for the Palestinian unity, which is the prisoner's document that drew a roadmap for the future of the political vision of the Palestinian people that all Palestinian factions all together signed on. And I think this is exactly why my father is being targeted. Of course, it comes under the full context of the collective punishment of the Palestinian political prisoners and the Palestinian people overall. The devastation in Gaza, the settler terrorism in the West Bank, the racism of the Palestinians inside Israel, against them inside Israel, and the Palestinians who live in the diaspora. But I think it's also important to understand that they do this deliberately with the Palestinian leaders. And I think that my father has gone through at least that we know of more than 10 assaults. And when we say assaults, some of them he got his ribs broken, some of them he got other parts of his body injured severely. But with all that being said, I think that the last time the lawyer saw him a few weeks ago, he said that he was strong mentally, he was hopeful about the future, he was positive. And I will, you know, I can say that what my favorite quote of my father when he said, "Our chains will be broken before we are." He knew exactly what he was signing up for when he signed up for the Palestinian Liberation Movement overall. And this is a price that all the seekers for freedom and for a noble cause, such as the Palestinian cause, have to pay, unfortunately. And we as a family, we're not unique. I wish that we were unique, but we're talking about more than 10,000 Palestinian political prisoners' families that are going through the same nightmare that myself, my siblings, my mother are going through at the moment, which is waking up every day and fearing that we will hear bad news about my father after more than 100 Palestinian political prisoners have been killed. And after what we've heard from Mr. Khalid about the horrible conditions, the appalling, the inhumane conditions that the Palestinian political prisoners are going through. I just want to end this by saying that we have launched, my great mother, Fadwa Barghouthi, has launched a campaign in 2002 for the release of my father and all Palestinian political prisoners. She launched the international campaign from Nelson Mandela Cell in 2013. And then we relaunched the international campaign back in November after we saw that, unfortunately, my father has been denied, the right of freedom in the last exchange, because they understand he's not a security threat, but he's a political threat. He's someone that can unify the Palestinian people along with the other amazing leaders that we have. But that's why they're being cornered, they're being put in prisons, they're being dealt with in so many ways. But he's always said that hopelessness is a privilege that we don't have as Palestinians. I will never lose hope. I will keep fighting along with my people for the freedom of all Palestinian prisoners. And I can tell you that my father is going to be released. He's going to meet his 6 grandchildren that he's never met before. And he's going to contribute to Palestinian freedom as much as he can, like I've always known him. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you for that contribution. It's a story that I think many of people here, including myself, haven't heard, aside to the political prisoners, that really humanizes what's going on. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about this behind screens, and to humanize people can be quite difficult from such a distance. So thank you for that. And to introduce our final speaker, we now have Zahra Faruqi. Zahra's story is a reminder of the reach of the occupation's repression and of the courage required to resist it. As a liberated UK political prisoner, Zahra was targeted and held for 15 months without a single charge or trial after taking direct action against Elbit Systems. Since her release, she has remained a driving force in the movement, working with the strategy and campaigns team at ASAP to lead student organising across the country. Zahra will be connecting her personal journey to the wider struggle, focusing on practical organising strategies and how we can use student mobilisation and political pressure to challenge the prison system and defend those criminalised for their resistance. Zahra, the floor is yours. You're muted. Still can't hear you, but although you're unmuted, it might be a mic thing on your end. Okay. Zahra's just gonna take a second to rejoin. In the meantime, let's direct some of the questions, as I know Dr. Mustafa and Arab, yourselves, you have to leave. So maybe we can just direct some of the questions until Zahra rejoins. Okay. We have, let me pull it up. One of the first questions that we do have is this draconian law of death penalty is a legal document of an apartheid state. Can this be added to the ICC application? Any of the speakers that would like to contribute, please feel free to contribute. Dr. Mustafa, you're muted.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, in my opinion, it can be used in the ICC, and it can be used also in the International Court of Justice, because the ICJ has already ruled that Israel cannot practice apartheid in the occupied territories, and this would be an additional document. The problem is that all these rulings that have happened by by ICC and ICJ are not implemented, and Netanyahu himself is accused of being a war criminal, and is wanted by the ICC. So these instruments are very useful, but they cannot materialize unless really we conduct the largest possible boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign. Israel, I want to add here something important. Israel will never change from within. The whole system has gone into the direction of fascism. And I have to say the Israeli society has moved in the direction of fascism. What we see is unprecedented since maybe the rise of Nazism in Germany. So that's why I think I keep repeating, the only way to materialize this solidarity movement with the Palestinian people and transform it into a material effect to change the balance of power is through BDS and boycott, divestment, sanctions.
Shall I go on to the next question? Arab or Khalid, do you have any contributions, or shall I move on to the next one?
No, you can move on.
Yeah? Okay. All right. The next question is, for those of us planning to raise awareness of this issue in our capacity as activists, does the panel recommend that we refer to those in prison as prisoners, detainees, hostages, abductees, all or none of these? Please advise. We want to take our lead from Palestinians working on this issue.
I think I will defer again to Dr. Mustafa because you're not going to find a better person to answer that.
Thank you, Arab. I think there are two terms that should be used continuously. Political prisoners, for sure, because these are political prisoners. They are people who struggle for the freedom of their country. But most recently, we initiated a very important campaign calling them hostages. And I think the Red Ribbon campaign, which I invite all of you to join, is a very important campaign. You remember how much the Israelis used the yellow ribbon to refer to what they called Israeli hostages. And the whole world was talking about them. And then when they were all released, nobody spoke about the Palestinian hostages. So in my opinion, given that Israel is violating all international laws and international humanitarian laws, in the way they are dealing with our political prisoners, including, of course, I have to say, the admirable leaders of Palestine, Marwan Barghouti, who I am very proud to refer to as a friend and as a friend in struggle, and other leaders like Ahmed Saadat and others, and Hassan Youssef and others. I think we have to remind everybody that these people are hostages. They're kept as hostages and they have to be released. And that's why I add to the political prisoner name also the name of hostages. And I invite all of you, especially the younger generation, to join the Red Ribbon campaign.
Thank you for that. And we'll do one last question as Zahra has joined again. Do the panelists see any hope in European nations like Spain and Italy, who have recently made some positive steps regarding the Palestinian case? What can be done within European institutions? Is that something do you also give the floor to Dr. Mustafa again?
No, I'll take this one from him. No worries.
No, I think Arab can answer. Please answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the European countries, I think what our strategy as Palestinians should be is to attract more and more countries into our, I think one of the, this is my personal opinion, one of the mistakes that many of the pro-Palestinians around the world, out of love, of course, and good faith, do is to start to push away even the celebrities, the public figures, the cultural figures that they feel had a horrible position regarding Palestine. And once they start to come into a journey, because everyone needs to get educated, they were ignorant about Palestine. Once you learn about Palestine, I think it takes you, like I always say, if you come to Palestine, it takes you 2 hours to understand who's oppressed and who's the oppressor. I think just from a city to city, you'll understand everything that you need to learn. And this applies on, so we need to be more welcoming at the movement in general. And I think this applies also on countries. The rise of European governments that are calling for the support of the Palestinian people's struggle for freedom is something to be proud of. And I think that we need to keep pushing. We want to challenge also the ones that still didn't get this to this level and to this position. And I think that with the pressure that the pro-Palestinians in their own countries, because these are the people who are from there, these are citizens, these are people who understand who are their representatives, what are the pressure points, and so on. That's where they need to keep pushing, and we need to help them as Palestinians as well. Because I totally agree with what Dr. Mustafa said. The only hope that we have is to isolate Israel, just like the apartheid South African regime has been isolated, and that was the only way to end the apartheid. It wasn't that the leaders of the apartheid regime woke up one day and they became good people out of a sudden. It became too costly on them. They became too isolated. And that's exactly the only way to deal with the current Israeli system. I just want to add one thing that I saw a question about how they can support our campaign, especially in the UK and everywhere. There is a Free Marwan campaign. If you visit freemarwan.org, you'll have all the information there. It has the material that people can use for the demonstrations. It has the information about who he is. And it's very important to always remember that the Free Marwan campaign represents the whole of the Palestinian political prisoners, like it always did.
Thank you so much, Adab. And you're right. It's about isolating Israel and making it a pariah state where it becomes political, financial, and social suicide to associate yourself with the Zionist entity. Someone's asking to repeat the name of this campaign. It's Free Marwan. Is it freemarwan.org? And then I think, yeah, there we go. Okay, perfect timing. All right. Let's go back to Zahra as she has rejoined. Zahra, are you...
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. But yeah, it's really an honor to be here and to hear firsthand these experiences and what it looks like for Palestinians on the ground. So for me personally, I want to focus on what support we can bring as people who live in the Imperial Core. I'm from the UK, and I spent 15 months in a British prison as a political prisoner here. And that for me felt like an exception. It felt like, what's going on? There must be something wrong here. And as we've heard from the other panelists, this is just the reality for life in Palestine. If you're not imprisoned yourself, a family member or a friend. And I think it's really important for us to understand, as people who kind of have the privilege for this kind of thing to be an exception, to realize that it's not a choice for Palestinians whether or not they interact with the prison system or with the occupation in that way. It's just a part of daily life. And so I think one thing that's very important for us is to think about the best way that we can support the Palestinian prisoners. And for me, what that looks like is supporting the reason that they're in prison in the first place. Because what the occupation is trying to do is to crush the spirit of the Palestinians. It's trying to make you look at prison as an isolated incident, that this is just something that happens and it's not part of sort of a wider movement of oppression that's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And in that context, I would really invite us all to focus on the cause of liberation that has meant that so many Palestinians have ended up in prison in the first place. What we have to do is we have to make their fight our fight. Because so many of the Palestinian prisoners, what they've actually done is they've lit the road ahead for us. And in so doing, they've sacrificed so much. So if we simply ignore the reason as to why they've ended up in prison in the first place, which is the occupation, it's a fight for liberation, it's because that spirit of resistance is one that the occupation wants to crush, then we just have let them end up there for no reason. And that we just cannot allow that to happen. One thing that I think is really important is understanding, while we're living in the UK, for example, in my case, this country is complicit in arming the Israeli occupation with its technologies and with its material tools to actually be able to imprison Palestinians, to kill people in Gaza on a day-to-day basis. And this is something that we can very tangibly target. In this country, you have Elbit Systems, which is the largest weapons manufacturer for Israel itself. They produce 85% of the weaponry that has been sent there for 20 years. This is not a new thing at all. And for us, when we focus on things like Elbit, for example, this is where we strike at the core of the occupation here in the West. In our recent trial for my case, for example, we were not allowed to mention Elbit or to mention anything related to them in terms of the first 6 defendants. And so this goes to show that this is what scares the occupation. It's the idea that you start realizing that it's all interconnected. Israel is here just as much as it's in Palestine, just we don't feel it as much. And so the key for us going forward then is to look at how our universities, our institutions have ties with these companies. So it's about looking at sanctions, looking at direct action. It's about recognizing that for us, we might have to start paying a price. We've been used to showing our solidarity through simply liking or sharing posts, for example, online, but that's just not enough. We have to really embody what it means to take on this struggle for liberation as our own. It's not something far-fetched, it's something we really feel. Because if you see the sort of torture scenes that have been described today, for example, if any one of us saw that in front of us, we would be compelled to act. We wouldn't be able to just go on with our day-to-day lives. And that's the central core, is that all these stories, we can't just let them exist in a vacuum. They have to mean more. And us living in our comforts in the West, we end up being complicit in that oppression simply by contributing through our taxes or just by enjoying the comforts here. And we have to think about the world we want to live in, because it can't be one where we just end up complacent and happy with simply liking and resharing, while new laws like this death penalty comes in every other month and we just sort of move on with our lives. And I think for me as a Muslim as well, it's really important to understand that when Allah tells us that, there must be something wrong with you, that if people are oppressed, you're not standing up for them, that we really take that to heart. Because this is a cause that's going to touch every single one of us down the line. If you don't care about Palestine now, it's going to start affecting you later on. And we've seen that with the way that our own governments have become more and more repressive. And so I think what I just like to end on is just a call to action that, when we look at this country and its complicity in terms of the military aid it's giving, we have to understand that the noose that is used to hang a Palestinian, without the noose, the Israelis can do nothing. And we have that power here. We can stop the weapons and the infrastructure that is being sent over to Palestine from ever getting there in the first place. That is our role. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zahra. Thank you so much for your contribution. You really bring a very unique angle to this, considering that you spent all the time that you did in the UK and you were subject to the repression of the government. Dr. Mustafa, do you have a few more minutes to go through any questions, or do you need to leave? You're muted again.
We have 7 minutes more if you want.
Okay, great.
So, before I answer questions, I want to say that when I hear you personally, and when I hear the presentation we've just heard from this wonderful person, I feel very proud about the younger generation. You give us a lot of hope that change is coming, really.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot of admiration to Zahra here more than anybody else for all of the work that she has done and the sacrifice that she has taken, and to yourself too. We, as a young Palestinian myself, we look up to yourself, Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you.
Okay, the questions that have come through is, what does Dr. Mustafa make of the new EU sanctions on Israeli settlers? Does it have any tangible effect to the situation on the ground? We're mobilizing in the UK with petitioning people to sign government petitions, leafleting and raising awareness. Are you able to expand on what we can do more to mobilize to try to achieve results rather than just awareness?
It's a little step, a small one, not enough, of course, but as Arab said, and I agree with him, we have to welcome any good development. But we have to also make it clear that this is very little in comparison to what should be done by the European Union. And I think the best thing here is to mention is how Netanyahu responded to these acts by the European Union. He said he directed himself to the Chancellor of Germany and said, yes, we are doing the dirty job for you. And because, as you remember, that's what the German Chancellor said about Netanyahu. And in my opinion, we should welcome this step, but we should also not allow European policymakers and governments to get away with that. What we need is complete block of the association agreement. And I think pressure is mounting in that direction. Little steps are not enough. We need more than that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Zahra, do you have anything to contribute to that question, or would you like me to move on to the next question?
Yeah, I'm happy for you to move on.
Okay. Another question that we have is, what role do the Palestinians expect a country like Pakistan to play? How can we mobilize in Pakistan that actually benefits the Palestinian cause? There are no arms companies like the Elbit systems here, which are directly related to Israel. So what shall be the steps that we must take? It's an interesting and different angle.
I think Pakistan should direct its attention. I mean, already Pakistan has the right decision and in terms of boycotting Israel and not having relations with it. But I think there should be more pressure so that Pakistan and other Muslim countries would pressure the United States more about the Israeli violations. And in that sense, they can play an important role because they have relations with the United States. And they have some military cooperation, and I think directing great pressure on the American administration in this regard would be very useful. Also, I would suggest to Pakistan and any other country that they should do everything they can to help the steadfastness of the Palestinian people on the ground, because the more we steadfast here in Palestine, the more we remain here on the ground, the more we can be sure that Israel will fail and that the Zionist movement will fail to conduct ethnic cleansing. And if they fail to conduct ethnic cleansing, we will overcome. So the big fight here is about supporting the steadfastness of the Palestinian people on the ground. The two major elements of the struggle today are steadfastness of the people on the ground and helping them and supporting them, including, of course, the families of Palestinian political prisoners, but also conducting the largest possible international campaign to impose sanctions on Israel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mustafa. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the questions here, and what I'm gonna do is give each of the speakers just a minute to give us the closing remarks, any last minute, any concluding points, last things that you would like to say to everybody here, and a general contribution. So I'll hand the floor to you first, Dr. Mustafa.
Well, I just want to say thank you for everybody that participated today, and please keep up the good work. And most important, I want to add, don't ever lose hope. I think our biggest enemy, and I keep repeating that, especially to the younger generation, is not Israel. Our biggest enemy is hopelessness and frustration. So never allow hopelessness to get to you, and have the hope that we will succeed, regardless of all the difficulties, regardless of the terrible stories we've just heard from Khalid and the suffering of the people. We should keep the hope and keep the belief that we will overcome. There is no way that Palestinians will not get their freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for your contribution. Zahra, do you have any closing final remarks?
Yeah, I think to echo what Dr. Mustafa just said, the importance of hope. and also of courage. And I think that oftentimes we can just get used to just watching these images on our screens or hearing these testimonies and just think that that's it, that we don't have a role to play in this. So I think it's about also taking that personal responsibility, that what is it that I can do with my skills? Like, we have so many resources here and so much privilege, and we have to think of all the freedoms that we enjoy that come with a huge amount of responsibility as well, because it's about what we're going to do with what we've been given, and that's something we're going to be asked about. And I think, again, it's just recognizing that we all have a part to play in this. And if you really sort of feel for the Palestinians and you take on their fight as your own, that means you're willing to take any personal risk in order to get to that point of liberation. And that's something that we need to really centralize.
Thank you so much for your contribution and thank you for joining. خالد إذا بتحب تحكي بالعربي.
شكرا لكم فعلا على الاستضافة وإتاحة كمان مساحة للحديث على واحد من أهم المواضيع باعتقادي، وموضوع الأسرى وكل ما يمارس بحقهم. ولكن يعني رسالة الأسرى هي واحدة، يعني لا يعقل أنه كل حروب الأرض ممكن أن تنتهي وكل حروب الأرض يكون فيها هدى إلا الحرب على الأسرى. يعني حان الوقت بالفعل أن توقف الحرب على الأسرى، على 10,000 أسير وأكثر يمارس بحقهم التعذيب، الموت، الاغتصاب، بتر الأطراف. يريدون فقط الحياة. هؤلاء البشر يستحقون الحياة. إن بالذات هنا أختم أن ربع الأسرى موجودون اليوم بدون محاكمات، بدون تهم، اعتقالات إدارية حسب قوانين، بدون أي مخالفات. فحان الوقت بالفعل لإنقاذ هؤلاء البشر.
I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you all for hosting me. I would like to thank you very much for speaking about a very important topic, which is the topic of the political prisoners or the hostages. It is unfathomable that so many wars have ended. Everything has ended in the world, yet the war on these hostages has not ended, on these political prisoners has not ended. There are 10,000 prisoners who all they want is life. They want to live. They want to have a good life. A quarter of them have been incarcerated without trial, administrative detention. All they want is freedom to see their offspring and to live a prosperous life like anybody else in this world. This war on the prisoners has to stop. There should be an international stance against these Israeli laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a conversation it's been. I want to thank each of our speakers, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, Khalid Mahajne, Arab Barghouti, and Zahra, for their time, their experience, and their commitment to the struggle. And thank you for being here. The people that have joined, your presence matters, your solidarity matters. And as we mentioned at the start of this, all our findings from tonight will be published and shared. We'll make sure that you can access them. So keep an eye on the GAFP's channels, Instagram, X, our website. And this is not the end. We will constantly be having campaigns to discuss everything that's happening. Last month, we mapped the machinery of propaganda. Tonight, we're confronting the machinery of state execution. There is so much more work to do, more voices to hear, and more tools for the movement to build. Please keep your eyes peeled for everything that we're going to be working on, and the more we work together, the stronger that we're going to be. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone will see you. We'll see everyone in the next webinar.